The message arrived on a Tuesday, broadcast across all standard diplomatic frequencies with the kind of formal politeness that made Counselor Teth's fur stand on end. Not because it was threatening, quite the opposite. The transmission from the third planet of Sol system was so perfectly crafted, so diplomatically correct that it felt wrong somehow. New species usually stumbled through first contact protocols, making endearing mistakes or cultural missteps that broke the ice. This message followed every rule to the letter. Greetings, representatives of the Galactic Council. The transmission began in flawless council standard. We are the United Earth Government, speaking on behalf of humanity. We have recently achieved faster-than-light travel and seek formal diplomatic relations with your esteemed organization. We request permission to send a delegation to discuss trade opportunities and territorial boundaries. We await your response with great interest. Teth shared the message with the First Contact Committee during their weekly meeting aboard Harmony's Rest, the Council's neutral diplomatic station. The committee members, all herbivorous species chosen for their gentle nature and scholarly approach to new civilizations, found the human message refreshingly professional. Finally, a species that understands proper protocols, chirped Delegate Nim, her bird-like head bobbing with approval. Most newcomers ramble for hours about their achievements or make demands before introductions. Counselor Voss, whose people resembled enormous rabbits, twitched his whiskers thoughtfully. The linguistic analysis suggests they studied our communication patterns extensively before making contact. Very thorough. Very methodical. The committee voted unanimously to invite the human delegation. Standard procedure called for a welcoming feast followed by 3 days of cultural exchange before formal negotiations began. They prepared the usual spread of fruits, grains, and synthesized proteins that appealed to most herbivorous and omnivorous species. The humans had specified they would arrive with a 3-person delegation, which seemed appropriately modest for a newcomer species. 3 weeks later, the human shuttle docked at Harmony's Rest with mechanical precision. The airlock hissed open, and Ambassador Reed stepped through with fluid grace that somehow reminded Teth of a hunting cat, despite the man's formal diplomatic attire. He was tall and lean, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to take in everything. At once, the exits, the ceiling height, the number of security personnel, the positioning of the welcoming committee. Counselor Teth, Reed said, extending his hand in the human greeting gesture they had studied. His grip was firm but controlled, and Teth noticed the calluses on his palm. Thank you for welcoming us. May I present Corporate Negotiator Walsh and Military Liaison Torres. Walsh moved with the same predatory smoothness as Reed, her blonde hair pulled back severely and her smile never quite reaching her pale eyes. She carried herself like someone accustomed to boardrooms and power plays. Torres was compact and muscular, with scars on his hands and the kind of relaxed alertness that suggested extensive combat training. All 3 humans wore dark suits that somehow managed to look both formal and tactical. The welcoming ceremony proceeded smoothly until the feast. The committee had prepared their finest vegetarian dishes, arranged beautifully on crystalline platters. The humans examined the spread with polite interest before Reed spoke. This looks wonderful, he said with genuine appreciation. However, we brought our own provisions. Dietary restrictions, you understand. He gestured to Torres, who produced 3 sealed containers from their shuttle supplies. The contents made several committee members visibly uncomfortable. The human meals consisted primarily of what appeared to be preserved animal proteins, dense, dark substances that the humans consumed with obvious satisfaction. They ate with efficient movements, their teeth designed for tearing and grinding in ways that reminded Teth uncomfortably of creatures from his homeworld's fossil record. Your world must have interesting wildlife, Nim ventured, trying to make conversation while pointedly not looking at the human's meal. Earth has remarkable biodiversity, Reed agreed. Though humans are the dominant predator, we evolved as persistence hunters. We would chase prey across vast distances until exhaustion, claimed them. Very effective technique. The casual way he described hunting living creatures sent ripples of unease through the committee. Most council species had evolved past such behavior millions of years ago, if they had ever engaged in it at all. How fascinating, Voss managed, his whiskers twitching nervously. And your society has moved beyond such primitive necessities? Walsh smiled, the expression somehow more unsettling than reassuring. Oh, we've refined our approaches considerably. Modern humans rarely need to hunt for survival. We've developed much more sophisticated methods of resource acquisition. Torres nodded agreement while methodically consuming what looked like dried muscle tissue. Competition drives innovation. Earth's history is essentially a case study in applied problem-solving under pressure. The committee exchanged glances. Most species describe their history in terms of cultural development, artistic achievement, or scientific discovery. The humans seem to view their past as a series of strategic challenges overcome through superior tactics. Tell us about human culture, Teth requested, hoping to steer the conversation toward safer topics. What does your species value most? Reed considered the question carefully. Adaptability, persistence, the ability to thrive in changing circumstances. Humans spread across Earth by learning to survive in every environment, from Arctic tundra to tropical rainforests to high-altitude mountains. When we reached our technological threshold, we applied the same principles to space exploration. Your expansion beyond your homeworld happened quite rapidly, Nim observed. Our analysts detected your first fusion drives only decades ago, yet you now have installations throughout your solar system. Once humans identify a viable territory, we tend to claim it quickly, Walsh explained with business-like efficiency. Resource competition on Earth taught us the value of rapid expansion and defensive positioning. The phrase defensive positioning sent another chill through the committee. Combined with the humans' predatory grace and casual discussion of hunting, it painted a picture of a species that approached diplomacy like a military campaign. As the evening progressed, the humans proved to be excellent conversationalists, knowledgeable, articulate, and genuinely interested in council civilization. Yet underneath their polite exterior, something fundamentally different lurked. They moved like apex predators, thought like strategic planners, and spoke about their history as if violence was simply another tool in a comprehensive toolkit. When the formal meal concluded, Reed stood with fluid precision. Thank you for your hospitality, Counselor Teth. We look forward to tomorrow's cultural exchange sessions. I believe our species have much to learn from each other. As the humans departed for their guest quarters, Teth realized he had never felt quite so much like prey in his entire diplomatic career. The humans had done nothing overtly threatening, had followed every protocol perfectly, and had been genuinely pleasant company. They were also the most dangerous beings he had ever encountered. The negotiations began in Conference Room 7, a circular chamber designed to promote equality among all participants. No head table, no dominant positions, just a gentle curve of seats where species could interact as equals. The human delegation arrived precisely on time, their dark suits somehow making them stand out despite the room's neutral lighting. They carried slim briefcases and wore expressions of professional courtesy that never quite masked the predatory intelligence in their eyes. Counselor Teth had assembled the council's finest diplomatic minds for these talks. Economic specialist Rill, whose people had perfected trade agreements across 17 sectors. Cultural advisor Pex, whose species had mediated conflicts for over 3 millennia. Defense coordinator Cole, whose military background provided insight into security matters. All herbivorous, all committed to peaceful resolution, all beginning to understand they were out of their depth. Reed opened the formal session with a presentation about Earth's capabilities. His tone remained conversational, almost casual as he outlined humanity's recent expansion across their solar system. He spoke of mining operations on asteroids, research stations on hostile worlds, and a growing fleet of ships designed for what he termed deep space exploration. Our industrial capacity has grown exponentially, Reed explained while holographic displays showed Earth's manufacturing centers. We've established automated production facilities throughout the Sol system. Current output includes advanced electronics, fusion drives, and various defensive systems. The phrase defensive systems caught everyone's attention. Cole leaned forward, his rabbit-like ears pricked with interest. What manner of defensive systems? Walsh smoothly took over, her presentation shifting to technical specifications that made the council delegates increasingly uncomfortable. Standard kinetic weapons primarily, accelerated projectiles moving at significant fractions of light speed, very efficient for deterring hostile actions. We've also developed some interesting applications of fusion technology for area denial. Area denial. The humans spoke about weapons of mass destruction the way most species discussed farming equipment. Teth noticed Torres making quiet notes throughout the presentation, his scarred hands moving with mechanical precision. Your military development seems quite advanced for a species just achieving interstellar travel, Pex observed carefully. Most civilizations focus on exploration and communication technologies first. Reed's smile was warm and completely terrifying. Human history has taught us the importance of preparedness. We've experienced numerous learning opportunities regarding conflict resolution. Our ancestors developed comprehensive strategic doctrines through intensive practical application. The euphemisms were almost worse than direct statements. Learning, opportunities, intensive practical application. The humans were describing their wars as educational experiences, which suggested they viewed violence as a science to be perfected rather than a tragedy to be avoided. Perhaps you could elaborate on these historical precedents, Rill suggested. As economic specialist, he needed to understand the trading partner humanity might become. How did your species resolve territorial disputes? Torres looked up from his notes, and for a moment, his diplomatic mask slipped entirely. The expression underneath was that of a professional soldier evaluating potential battlefields. Total war doctrine proved most effective. Complete resource mobilization, systematic elimination of enemy capabilities, unconditional surrender as the only acceptable outcome. Very educational regarding the application of coordinated pressure. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Most council species had never conceived of warfare on such a scale. Their conflicts involved minor territorial adjustments, or resource-sharing disputes, settled through arbitration and compromise. Walsh seemed to sense the discomfort and smoothly redirected the conversation. Of course, those were primitive times. Modern humanity prefers economic and technological solutions. We found that superior production capacity and strategic positioning typically resolve disputes before they escalate to active conflict. Before they escalate. The implication being that active conflict remained an option, simply one held in reserve while other methods were attempted. Rill tried to regain control of the discussion by highlighting the Council's economic achievements. Our trade network spanned 47 sectors, facilitating peaceful commerce between hundreds of species. Our computational systems manage resource distribution with remarkable efficiency. Impressive, Walsh agreed with what seemed like genuine interest. We'd be very interested in examining those computational systems. Human quantum computers were originally developed for military applications, code breaking, strategic modeling, tactical optimization. They might offer some interesting collaborative opportunities. Everything came back to war. The humans couldn't discuss trade, technology, or culture without referencing their military applications. It was becoming clear that human civilization had developed along completely different lines from every other council species. Your people seem remarkably focused on conflict scenarios, Pex noted diplomatically. Do humans not pursue artistic or philosophical endeavors? Reed's expression brightened with genuine enthusiasm. Absolutely. Human strategic thinking has produced remarkable philosophical works. Sun Tzu's Art of War remains widely studied. Clausewitz's theories on political warfare are considered foundational texts. Our game theory mathematics originated from analyzing zero-sum competitive scenarios. Even their philosophy was about winning. Their academic pursuits focused on gaining advantages over opponents. Their entertainment apparently consisted of strategic simulations and competitive scenarios. Torres added helpfully, popular recreation includes tactical simulations, resource management competitions, and hunting scenarios. Very good for maintaining cognitive sharpness and strategic thinking skills. The council delegates were beginning to understand that they weren't negotiating with a species that happened to be good at war. They were dealing with a species that had turned warfare into their primary cultural expression, then learned to apply those same principles to diplomacy, trade, and apparently every other aspect of civilization. What about peaceful coexistence? Teth asked desperately. Surely humanity values cooperation with other species. Reed leaned back in his chair, with predatory grace. Cooperation is essential for successful pack hunting. Humans excel at forming alliances, coordinating resources, and eliminating common threats. We're very interested in establishing mutually beneficial relationships with council members. The way he said, eliminating common threats, suggested that humanity viewed the galaxy as an ecosystem requiring active management, with humans, naturally, serving as the apex predators responsible for maintaining order. Walsh began outlining potential trade agreements with the same methodical precision she might use to plan a military campaign: resource extraction rights, territorial boundaries, security arrangements. Every proposal somehow positioned humanity as the dominant partner, offering protection and stability in exchange for economic concessions and strategic positioning. As it does, the session concluded, Teth realized that humanity hadn't come seeking acceptance into galactic civilization. They had come to politely inform the Council that galactic civilization now included apex predators, and everyone else needed to adjust their expectations accordingly. The humans packed their materials with efficient movements and filed out of the conference room with the satisfied air of predators who had successfully established their territory. Behind them, they left a group of herbivorous diplomats trying to process the reality that their peaceful galaxy had just been claimed by creatures who treated war as a recreational activity. The negotiations would continue tomorrow, but the outcome was already becoming clear. Humanity wasn't asking permission to join the galactic community. They were explaining how that community would function now that apex predators had evolved thumbs and learned to wear suits. The cultural exchange program seemed like such a reasonable idea. After 2 days of increasingly tense negotiations, Counselor Teth had suggested that the humans visit various council worlds to better understand galactic civilization. Perhaps, seeing how peaceful species actually lived would help humanity appreciate the benefits of cooperative coexistence. Perhaps exposure to gentle pastoral societies would soften their predatory edges. The humans accepted the invitation with enthusiasm that should have been reassuring, but somehow wasn't. Their first stop was New Harmony, a Centauri colony world, famous for its conflict resolution techniques and artistic achievements. The planet's rolling meadows and crystalline cities represented the pinnacle of herbivorous civilization, a place where different species lived in perfect harmony, their needs balanced through careful negotiation and mutual respect. Colony Administrator Vel greeted the human delegation at the spaceport, her graceful movements and soft voice exemplifying everything the Centauri people valued. She had planned a comprehensive tour showcasing their achievements in sustainable agriculture, cooperative governance, and peaceful dispute resolution. Reed expressed genuine interest in their social structures, asking detailed questions about population distribution, resource allocation, and communication networks. His inquiries seemed academic at first, until Torres began taking notes with the systematic thoroughness of someone conducting a military intelligence assessment. Your settlements follow interesting patterns, Torres observed as they visited the third agricultural commune. Centralized population centers with distributed resource production. Very efficient layout for coordination purposes. Vel preened at what she assumed was a compliment. The Centauri people believe in harmony between society and environment. Our communities are designed to minimize conflict and maximize cooperation. Walsh studied the settlement's protective barriers with professional interest. And these perimeter systems? For keeping wildlife out of the agricultural areas? Precisely, Vel confirmed. We've learned to coexist with native species by establishing clear boundaries, non-violent deterrent systems that protect both our crops and the local ecosystem. The humans exchanged glances that Vel missed entirely. Reed made another note about boundary maintenance and population control measures. From their perspective, the Centauri had built a perfect example of prey species behavior: clustered populations, minimal defenses, and social structures designed to avoid rather than win conflicts. At the evening cultural presentation, local artists demonstrated traditional harmony songs, complex musical pieces requiring perfect coordination between multiple species. The effect was beautiful and deeply moving, representing thousands of years of cultural evolution toward cooperative expression. Remarkable, Reed commented afterward. The level of coordination required must demand extensive practice and mutual trust. Very sophisticated group dynamics. Fell glowed with pride. The harmony songs are our greatest cultural achievement. They require each species to suppress individual desires for the good of the collective performance. Torres looked up from his ever-present notepad. Suppression of individual initiative. Interesting social control mechanism. Very effective for maintaining group cohesion and preventing disruption. The way he said disruption made it sound like a military term, which Vel was beginning to realize it probably was from the human perspective. Their next destination was the academic consortium on Rigel 4, where the galaxy's greatest scholars pursued pure research in massive university complexes. The humans toured laboratories studying theoretical physics, xenobiology, and cultural anthropology, with the absorbed attention of students examining particularly interesting specimens. Dean Wex proudly explained their conflict avoidance protocols, developed over centuries to prevent academic disputes from disrupting research. We found that competition breeds hostility, he explained. Our system ensures all researchers receive equal resources and recognition. No competitive pressure, Walsh mused, making notes about resource distribution and hierarchical structures. How do you maintain innovation without selection pressure? The question caught Wex off guard. Most visiting species focused on their collaborative achievements, not their competitive limitations. Well, the pursuit of knowledge provides its own motivation. We don't require artificial pressures to drive discovery. Reed nodded thoughtfully. On Earth, our most significant advances came during periods of intensive competition. Military, research, commercial development, territorial expansion. Pressure creates innovation, Torres added helpfully. Academic institutions on Earth often compete for funding, recognition, and the best students. Very effective for maintaining research quality and strategic relevance. Everything was strategic with these humans. They couldn't observe a peaceful research facility without analyzing its competitive weaknesses and resource vulnerabilities. The final stop was Pacifica, an ocean world where aquatic species had developed the galaxy's most advanced meditation and conflict resolution techniques. The entire planetary government operated through consensus-building processes that could take months to resolve simple decisions. Governor Tide welcomed the humans to an underwater city, where architectural flowing curves mimicked natural ocean currents. Our people have transcended the primitive need for individual achievement, she explained through translation implants. We exist in perfect harmony with our environment and each other. The humans observed a council session where representatives from different aquatic species spent hours discussing a minor trade agreement. Every participant had equal speaking time. Every concern was addressed with infinite patience, and the final decision emerged through gradual consensus rather than voting or leadership direction. Fascinating social experiment, Reed commented afterward. How do you handle time-sensitive decisions? Emergency situations requiring rapid response. Tide seemed confused by the question. We have no emergencies. Our society is designed to prevent circumstances requiring hasty action. Careful planning and patient deliberation eliminate crisis situations. Walsh and Torres exchanged another one of those meaningful looks that Vel was learning to dread. The humans were cataloging weaknesses with the methodical precision of military planners. Decision-making delays, consensus requirements, lack of rapid response capabilities, all potentially fatal vulnerabilities if someone decided to exploit them. During their return journey to Harmony's Rest, the humans compiled their observations with scholarly thoroughness. Their cultural exchange reports read like intelligence assessments, complete with detailed analyses of each species' social structures, defensive capabilities, and strategic limitations. Reed presented their findings to the Council with diplomatic courtesy that didn't quite conceal his predatory satisfaction. We've learned tremendously from these exchanges. The Council species have achieved remarkable social harmony through sophisticated conflict avoidance mechanisms. Very impressive examples of cooperative evolution. What he didn't say, but what every Council member understood, was that the humans had just completed a comprehensive study of their prey. They now knew exactly how peaceful species organized themselves, how they made decisions, how they resolved disputes, and most importantly, how they could be manipulated or overwhelmed by a species that understood strategic thinking. Teth realized, with growing horror, that the cultural exchange program had backfired catastrophically. Instead of civilizing the humans, they had provided apex predators with detailed intelligence about their potential prey. The humans now understood galactic civilization better than most council members, understood it the way a hunter understands the behavior patterns of every animal in its territory. The worst part was that the humans had been genuinely appreciative throughout the entire experience. They valued the opportunity to study other species, to learn about different approaches to social organization, to understand the galaxy they were about to inherit. Because that's what this was, Teth finally understood. Not first contact, not diplomatic negotiation, not cultural exchange. This was humanity conducting a feasibility study before beginning their expansion into galactic civilization. And from their perspective, the feasibility study had produced very encouraging results. The distress signal reached Harmony's Rest at 347 Standard Time, cutting through routine communications traffic like a scream of terror. A council transport convoy carrying medical supplies to the Outer Rim colonies had been ambushed by Rimworld raiders near the Kepler Junction. 3 ships seized, crew taken hostage, and the attackers were demanding ransom that the council couldn't possibly pay without encouraging future incidents. Teth stood in the Emergency Operations Center, watching his staff coordinate rescue efforts, while privately acknowledging they had very few options. Council ships weren't designed for combat. Their defensive systems were intended to deter casual pirates, not deal with organized raider fleets. The nearest Council military units were weeks away, and the hostages didn't have weeks. That's when Reed appeared at his elbow with the quiet grace of a hunting cat. "Counselor Teth," the human ambassador said politely, "we couldn't help but monitor your emergency channels. The human ship Persistence is currently conducting research operations approximately 6 hours from the Kepler Junction. Captain Hayes has volunteered to render assistance if you desire." Teth turned to study Reed's expression, looking for signs of ulterior motive or political calculation. He found only professional concern and the kind of predatory patience that suggested the humans had been expecting exactly this sort of opportunity. "The Persistence is a research vessel," Teth said carefully. "Our intelligence indicates the raiders possess significant firepower. I wouldn't want to risk your ship or crew in a situation beyond their capabilities." Reed's smile was warm and completely terrifying. "Captain Hayes is experienced in hostile environment operations. The Persistence carries standard defensive systems adequate for protecting research activities in contested space. I believe you'll find human definition of adequate defenses somewhat more comprehensive than Council standards." 6 hours later, Teth understood exactly what Reed had meant. The Persistence dropped out of hyperspace with mechanical precision, its sleek hull gleaming with weapon ports that definitely hadn't appeared in its original specifications. Captain Hayes was a compact woman with scars on her hands and the kind of relaxed alertness that Torres had displayed, the bearing of someone for whom violence was simply another professional skill. "Council Station Harmony's Rest. This is Captain Hayes aboard the research vessel Persistence." Her voice came across the communications channel with crisp military efficiency. "Requesting permission to commence rescue operations using minimal force protocols." Minimal force. Teth was beginning to understand that human language contained multiple layers of meaning, and their definition of minimal might differ significantly from galactic standards. Permission granted, Captain Hayes. Please exercise caution. The hostage's safety is our primary concern. Understood, Counselor. Initiating containment procedures. What followed redefined Teth's understanding of controlled violence. The Persistence approached the Raider fleet with leisurely confidence, broadcasting surrender demands in 17 languages while systematically analyzing the enemy ship's capabilities. When the Raiders responded with weapons fire, the human vessel's defensive systems activated with devastating efficiency. The Raider ships didn't explode, they simply stopped working. Their engines died, their weapons powered down, their life support systems switched to emergency backup, and their navigation computers displayed cheerful messages in Council Standard, informing them that their vessels had been temporarily disabled for safety reasons. Raider vessels, this is Captain Hayes. The human commander's voice carried across emergency channels with professional courtesy. Your ships are currently experiencing technical difficulties. Please prepare to receive boarding parties who will provide assistance with your surrender. The boarding operation was a masterpiece of applied psychology and overwhelming force. Human teams moved through the disabled Raider ships like death incarnate, wearing powered armor that made them look like mechanical demons. They encountered resistance with the sort of methodical efficiency that suggested extensive experience in ship-to-ship combat. Within 2 hours, the entire Raider fleet had been neutralized. 0 Council casualties. 3 minor human injuries that Captain Hayes described as routine occupational hazards. 47 Raiders in custody, their ships disabled but intact, their cargo seized and inventoried with bureaucratic thoroughness. The rescue operation should have been cause for celebration. Instead, Teth found himself staring at tactical displays that showed exactly how thoroughly the humans had dominated what should have been a challenging military engagement. Captain, Hayes delivered her after-action report with the same professional calm she might use to describe a successful asteroid survey. Hostiles neutralized without permanent casualties. Stolen cargo recovered. Prisoners prepared for transfer to Council custody. Standard containment procedures proved adequate for the threat level encountered. Standard procedures, adequate for the threat level. The humans had just executed a complex military operation with casual efficiency, and they were describing it as routine business. Captain Hayes, Teth managed carefully. Your research vessel appears remarkably well equipped for combat operations. Hayes looked genuinely puzzled by the observation. All human vessels operating in unsecured space carry appropriate defensive systems. The galaxy contains numerous hazards that might interfere with research activities. Pirates, hostile wildlife, territorial disputes. Basic security preparations are standard operating procedure. Torres had joined the debriefing, and his expression was professionally interested as he reviewed the tactical data. The Raider fleet used obsolete coordination protocols and predictable engagement patterns. Elementary tactical mistakes. Any competent military force would have achieved similar results. Any competent military force. The humans were describing the Council's most challenging security crisis as a training exercise suitable for Academy cadets. Your boarding teams demonstrated remarkable efficiency, Counselor Cole observed, his rabbit-like features twitching with nervous energy. Such operations typically require specialized military units. All human merchants and explorers receive basic security training, Hayes explained matter-of-factly. Hostile environment operations, small unit tactics, emergency medical procedures. Can't conduct safe research in contested space without proper preparation. Basic security training. The humans considered military-grade combat skills to be entry-level qualifications for their civilian personnel. Reed had remained quietly in the background throughout the debriefing, but now he stepped forward with diplomatic grace. The Council's gratitude is unnecessary but appreciated. Humanity is pleased to assist in maintaining galactic stability. We hope this incident demonstrates our commitment to mutually beneficial cooperation. Mutually beneficial cooperation. The euphemism was almost insulting in its blatant transparency. The humans had just demonstrated that they possessed military capabilities that made Council defenses irrelevant, and they were describing it as helpful cooperation between friends. Word of the incident spread through Council space within hours. carried by the same communication networks that had initially celebrated humanity's diplomatic approach to galactic relations. Suddenly, every species in the galaxy understood that the polite humans in their formal suits were apex predators who had learned to practice diplomacy while maintaining the capacity for overwhelming violence. The rescue operation had accomplished far more than saving a few hostages. It had established humanity's position in the galactic ecosystem with clinical precision. They weren't conquerors. They were the species other civilizations would call when they needed problems solved permanently. Teth realized that everything had changed in the space of 6 hours. The galaxy's predator-prey balance had shifted irrevocably, and every herbivorous species that had dominated through cooperation and peaceful coexistence now faced a universe where apex predators had learned to wear suits and follow proper diplomatic protocols. The humans hadn't revealed their true nature. They had simply stopped pretending that military supremacy wasn't the foundation upon which all their other capabilities rested. The mask hadn't slipped so much as been politely removed, revealing the smiling faces of creatures who had never forgotten what they were underneath. The emergency session of the full Galactic Council convened exactly 72 hours after the Kepler Junction incident, with representatives from 47 species gathered in the Great Assembly on Harmony's Rest. The circular chamber that had been designed to promote equality among peaceful civilizations now felt more like a prey animals meeting, with every delegate acutely aware that apex predators were sitting among them, wearing diplomatic credentials. Reed entered the chamber with the same predatory grace he had displayed during first contact, but now nobody pretended not to notice. He carried himself like a creature that owned everything it surveyed, politely acknowledging other delegates while his eyes cataloged exits, security positions, and potential threats with automatic precision. Walsh and Torres flanked him with the professional bearing of bodyguards who doubled as weapons specialists, their formal attire somehow failing to conceal the impression of violence held in careful reserve. Counselor Teth called the session to order with a tremor in his voice that no amount of diplomatic training could eliminate. The Council recognizes Ambassador Reed of the United Earth Government. Reed rose with fluid efficiency, his movement drawing every eye in the chamber. He approached the central podium with measured steps, his expression calm and attentive as he surveyed the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. When he spoke, his voice carried perfectly throughout the chamber, each word chosen with the precision of someone who understood exactly how much power each syllable contained. Honored delegates, he began with diplomatic courtesy that somehow managed to sound like a predator acknowledging prey. Recent events have provided an excellent opportunity to clarify humanity's position regarding galactic affairs. The incident at Kepler Junction demonstrates both the challenges facing peaceful civilizations and the solutions that cooperative species can achieve through coordinated effort. The euphemisms were masterful. Recent events instead of our military demonstration. Challenges facing peaceful civilizations instead of your complete vulnerability to organized violence. Solutions through coordinated effort instead of protection services whether you want them or not. Reed activated a holographic display showing shipping lanes, trade routes, and strategic positions throughout Council space. Red markers indicated recent pirate attacks, territorial disputes, and security incidents, a pattern of chaos that the Council had been struggling to address through diplomatic channels and economic sanctions. Analysis indicates that current security frameworks are inadequate for protecting legitimate commercial activities. Reed continued with clinical objectivity. Pirates, raiders, and territorial aggressors continue to exploit gaps in coverage and response capabilities. Traditional Council approaches, negotiation, arbitration, economic pressure, while admirable in principle, prove insufficient against entities that reject peaceful resolution. Every word was carefully chosen to avoid direct criticism while making the Council's limitations crystal clear. The assembled delegates sat in uncomfortable silence as Reed systematically deconstructed their entire approach to galactic governance. Humanity proposes a collaborative security arrangement, Reed announced, and the temperature in the chamber seemed to drop several degrees. Human ships already patrol frontier regions conducting legitimate research activities. These vessels, carry defensive systems adequate for deterring hostile actions, and could easily expand their mission parameters to include broader area protection. Area protection. The humans were offering to become the galaxy's police force, and everyone in the chamber understood that this wasn't really a proposal. It was a polite notification of what was already happening. Walsh rose from her seat to present the economic implications with the same systematic thoroughness she might apply to a corporate acquisition. Preliminary analysis suggests that coordinated security operations could reduce piracy losses by 85% within the first year. Trade route efficiency would improve dramatically, and frontier colonies could develop without constant threat assessment requirements. Torres added technical specifications with military precision. Human defensive capabilities are scalable to match threat levels. Standard patrol vessels carry adequate systems for routine deterrence. Specialized response units remain available for situations requiring enhanced solutions. Enhanced solutions. The phrase made several delegates visibly uncomfortable as they remembered the casual efficiency with which the Persistence had neutralized an entire raider fleet. Delegate Nim raised a trembling wing. Ambassador Reed, your offer is generous. However, the Council has traditional approaches to security matters. Our own defense forces, while limited, have maintained peace for centuries. Reed's smile was warm and completely predatory. Absolutely. Human forces would naturally operate in coordination with existing Council security, providing supplementary coverage in areas where traditional approaches prove insufficient. We have no desire to replace your institutions, merely to enhance their effectiveness. The lie was delivered with such diplomatic polish that it almost sounded believable. Everyone in the chamber understood that Council security forces were now irrelevant, but Reed was offering to let them maintain their dignity while humanity assumed actual responsibility for galactic order. What compensation would humanity require for these enhanced security services? Asked Economic Coordinator Rill, his voice barely above a whisper. Walsh activated another display showing resource flows, manufacturing capacity, and strategic materials. Standard arrangements, access to frontier territories for research activities, preferential trading agreements for essential materials, basing rights for refueling and maintenance operations. Quite reasonable considering the level of protection provided. Reasonable. The humans were claiming the galaxy piece by piece, presenting territorial acquisition as payment for protection services that nobody had actually requested. Reed concluded his presentation by returning to the podium with measured steps. Humanity views the galaxy as an ecosystem requiring careful management. Individual species excel in various specializations: the Centauri in agriculture, the Rigel Consortium in research, the Pacifica systems in meditation and philosophy. Humans happen to excel in strategic planning and conflict resolution. Conflict resolution through overwhelming force. Cultural specialization that positioned humanity as the apex predator in a galaxy full of prey species who had convinced themselves they lived in a post-predator universe. This arrangement benefits everyone, Reed continued with perfect diplomatic courtesy. Peaceful species can focus on their cultural and scientific achievements without concerning themselves with security matters. Human forces will handle the unfortunate necessity of dealing with entities that refuse to participate in civilized discourse. The chamber fell silent as delegates processed the reality of their situation. They could accept humanity's protection and surrender galactic independence, or they could reject it and face the consequences of operating in a universe where apex predators had evolved starships and diplomatic immunity. Councillor Voss attempted one final gesture of autonomy. Perhaps the Council should discuss these proposals in private session before. Of course, Reed agreed with gracious understanding. However, I should mention that human patrol vessels are already positioned throughout Council space to ensure continuity of current security operations. Coordination protocols are already in effect pending formal ratification. Already positioned, already in effect. The humans had presented their takeover as a diplomatic proposal, but the military occupation was already complete. The Council could vote to accept humanity's generous offer, or they could vote to accept it anyway. Torres consulted his ever-present notepad with professional interest. Current deployment includes 47 patrol vessels, 12 rapid response units, and 3 specialized intervention platforms. Coverage is comprehensive across all major trade routes and strategic positions. 47 vessels, 1 for each council species, positioned where they could monitor, protect, or eliminate threats as circumstances required. The humans had turned military occupation into a customer service initiative. Reed sensed the mood in the chamber and offered his final diplomatic stroke. Naturally, the Council retains complete autonomy over internal affairs. Human forces will restrict themselves to external threats and entities that pose risks to galactic stability. We have no interest in interfering with the internal governance of peaceful civilizations. Internal governance of a zoo, more accurately. The Council species could continue playing at democracy and cultural development, while humanity managed the universe around them. It was a comfortable cage, but still a cage. The vote was a formality. 47 species voted to accept humanity's generous offer of protection services. 0 opposed. 0 abstentions. The most unanimous decision in Council history, achieved through the gentle application of overwhelming force and polite explanations of reality. As the session concluded, Reed gathered his materials with the satisfied efficiency of someone who had just completed a successful business transaction. He approached Teth with diplomatic courtesy, extending his hand in the human gesture of friendship. "Thank you for your leadership during this transition period, Counselor Teth. Humanity looks forward to a long and prosperous partnership with the Council species." Teth accepted the handshake with numb resignation, feeling the controlled strength in Reed's grip. "Ambassador Reed, I hope your people will remember that we welcomed you peacefully." Reed's expression became genuinely warm, and for a moment, Teth glimpsed something almost like affection in the human's predatory eyes. "The Council's peaceful nature is precisely what makes this arrangement so beneficial for everyone. Humanity has no desire to change what you are. We simply want to ensure you can continue being exactly what you are without interference from less civilized entities. Protection. Preservation." The humans were turning galactic civilization into a nature preserve, with themselves as the rangers and everyone else as the wildlife to be protected and managed. As the human delegation departed, Reed paused at the chamber entrance for one final observation. "The galaxy is a dangerous place, Counselor Teth, full of predators and competitive pressures that peaceful species prefer not to acknowledge. Humanity is pleased to handle those unpleasant realities so that civilization can flourish." The doors closed behind the humans with mechanical finality, leaving the Council delegates alone with their new reality. The galaxy's predator-prey balance hadn't shifted. It had been completely rewritten by a species that treated warfare as recreational activity and diplomacy as applied psychology. In the corridor outside, Reed joined Walsh and Torres with the relaxed satisfaction of hunters who had successfully established their territory. The diplomatic masks dropped for just a moment, revealing expressions of professional accomplishment and predatory contentment. "Phase 1 complete," Walsh observed with corporate efficiency. "Full territorial integration achieved ahead of schedule." Torres nodded agreement while reviewing his tactical assessments. No significant resistance encountered. Local species proved remarkably compliant once strategic realities became clear. Reed smiled with genuine pleasure as they walked toward their shuttle. The galaxy is quite beautiful when properly managed. These species have achieved remarkable things through cooperation and peaceful development. They'll continue achieving remarkable things under appropriate protection. The humans had done exactly what they promised. They had brought peace, stability, and security to galactic civilization. The fact that this peace came at the cost of independence and self-determination was simply the price of admission to a universe where apex predators had learned to practice diplomacy while never forgetting their fundamental nature. As their shuttle departed Harmony's Rest, the 3 humans settled back in their seats with the satisfied air of professionals who had completed a challenging assignment successfully. They had come to the galaxy as diplomats, but everyone now understood what Earth had really sent. Apex predators in suits who had learned that the most effective conquest was the kind that made the conquered grateful for their chains. The galaxy was safer now, more stable, better protected, and humanity owned every star in it.